without difficulty, unless one likes
All right, here we are.
who is perfectly acquainted with it. So by all accounts, this is a pretty complicated structure.
A surprise.
Other people throughout history have talked about the labyrinth. Most notably perhaps is Herodotus, a great Greek historian. In his Histories book 2, he talked about the labyrinth and the fact that he visited it in Egypt. And of course, Herodotus comes from several centuries prior to Diodorus, so he's like the 5th century BC was when Herodotus lived, and he wrote his histories. And quoting him, he said, "This I saw myself, and I found it greater than words can say. For if one should put together and reckon up all the buildings and all the great works produced by the Hellenes," that's the Greeks, the Hellenes were the Greeks, "they would prove to be inferior in labour and expense to this labyrinth. Though it is true, both the temple in Ephesus and that at Samos are works worthy of note. The pyramids were also greater than words can say, and each one of them is equal to many works of the Hellenes, great as they may be, but the labyrinth surpasses even the pyramids." Herodotus is like, he knows about the pyramids, he knows about all of the Greek temples. In the Greeks, if you've been to ancient Greece, they built some amazing architecture, and these are his own people that he's talking about. And I don't know about you, but I spend literally a couple of months in Egypt every year. Been doing that for years now.
So, my screams were, there is no Siculus and there is no Pomponius. And it was about Herodotus as well. So we've got Siculus, 735, then Herodotus we're listening to now, Siculus again, and then Pomponius. Well, you wouldn't believe it, right? So I did all the rest of the books. And it's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. I got right to the very end, right to the last P, right? Because I'm doing H, L, P and S, right? The last P in this book, Pomponius. Can you believe it? I nearly didn't do it. I thought, what's the point? But I had to do it. And there it is. And Siculus, the first time I have seen Pomponius in all of these books on my children's lives, okay? Dead set. It's the first time, and it was in the very, very last book down in the bottom right-hand corner. Siculus, I haven't seen him anywhere other than in that book where he was talking with, in the same book as Herodotus. Siculus has never ever been in one of the indexes, and nor has Pomponius until the very, very last P and S. Unbelievable. Now, I could go through all of these, right, and read. What is that going to prove? What it's going to prove? It's complicated because I am 100% stand dunking the speed of light. It's absolute. It hasn't been measured. The light radiating from the sun has not been measured. It is not a measurable quantity. It cannot. It's absolute light. So I know Roma, blah blah blah, etc. Lagrange probably, Christian Huygens with that wave theory of light 200 years before. There's a lot that is not adding up. Roma did not detect a light delay because there is no light delay. We know that because of a solar eclipse. This stuff, most of it has been fabricated. It's very hard to explain. People are so stuck in your ways that, but when you really go through this stuff, look, let's I screamed. There was no Siculus, Pomponius. Those were the two basically, right? Herodotus, he's everywhere, everywhere. These other two. Let's read. Let me go Siculus and Pomponius first, right? Just to get them out of the way. And it was Mela Pomponius. So I looked in the last P, right? And I get Pomponius, which is, where's the P? So I'll go to the P, and here he is. Like the last, I'm thinking, this is not possible. But again, it's the only, where are we? Mela Pomponius. Tingatera, Roman Spain, author of the only ancient treatise on geography in classical Latin. The description of the world, written about AD 43 or 44. It remained influential until the beginning of the Age of Exploration, 13 centuries later. Probably intended for the general reader. It was cited by Pliny the Elder in his Encyclopedia of Natural Science as an important authority. Though the work was largely a borrowing from Greek sources and contained information that was frequently obsolete, it was unique among the ancient geographies in that it divided the Earth, which Mela placed at the centre of the universe, into 5 zones. A northern frigid zone, a northern temperate zone, a torrid zone, a southern frigid zone, and a southern temperate zone. The 2 temperate zones were habitable, but only one northern was known. The southern was unattainable by men of the north because of the necessity of passing through the unbearable heat of the intervening torrid zone in order to reach it. According to Mela, the ocean surrounding the Earth cut into it in 4 seas, the most important being the Mediterranean. He described the Mediterranean coast in counterclockwise fashion from the western end and moved clockwise around the coasts of Europe, Asia and Africa, mentioning islands at convenient intervals but often neglecting interiors. He avoided technical details such as distances, but usually included short phrases describing the places mentioned. Less was said of familiar regions than of distant countries, where even fabulous material was included. Now this is Pomponius. This is it. This is all I found in all of these books. What's that? I thought it was you guys moving. Story of Siculus. Let's see what it says in Siculus, right? These are the 2 that I was screaming about. They don't exist. They don't exist. They're nowhere. But right up until the end of the 1975s. And not even the in-depth. They weren't in the in-depth 1975. They were in the normal general knowledge. Ready reference. Right, so what we have, this is now Siculus.
Been there over a dozen times, and I just every time, I mean dozens of times have I stood in front of these pyramids, or have I sat in a hotel across the street from.
Oops. 1340.
So Ben, joining my plan manager,
I want to
has
get
taken
this one
pride in
over.
looking after his daughter's NDIS.
It's this Flinders.
Elsewhere. Ooh. My plan manager.
But
NDIS uncompleted.
I have to backtrack on what I said about Siculus and Pomponius, but only just.
Nescafe Blend 43.
4 months in Egypt every
Right,
year.
1340.
Get into them a little bit more and look at what they might possibly mean. And for more descriptions of how the labyrinth was built and what its features are, we return to Siculus here. Again, in his 1st century BCE histories, volume 1 about the labyrinth, he He wrote, while in respect of carving and other works of craftsmanship, they left no room for their successors to surpass them. For when one had entered the sacred enclosure, one found a temple surrounded by columns, 40 to each side, and this building has a roof made of a single stone, carved with panels and richly adorned with excellent paintings. So I think Diodorus here is describing one of these courts, these colonnaded column courts. And he's describing it as having 80 columns in it, 40 on each side. Now, to give you an idea of scale, this is the Valley Temple. If anyone's been to Egypt and gone into the mighty Valley Temple, one of the biggest megalithic structures that we still have today in Egypt, it has 16 pillars in it. If you go up to the other end of the causeway, in the Middle Pyramid Complex, the Mortuorial Pyramid Temple,
Excuse me.
24 pillars in it.
I'm not looking forward to this one.
Maybe he was talking about something else. Maybe he was talking about something like this. This is Luxor Temple on a visit at night. There might be 40 columns here. These columns are made piecemeal from sandstone, but there might be as many as 40 columns in this. He's talking about something that is twice the size of this, twice as many columns, and that there were 12 of them. So you take 80.
Did you hear that? We are talking about the Labyrinth underground, right? This city underground. Look up Luxor. Just look up.
He was talking about something else. Maybe he was talking about something like this. This is Luxor Temple on a visit.
If you're watching this, you're obviously half interested. Look up Luxor Temple, right? You'll see all these pillars. We're talking pillars. They're like, God knows how high they are, 30, 40 meters high. And then he says, well, there are twice as many pillars as you're seeing at Luxor, and then times it.
There might be 40 columns here. These columns are made piecemeal from sandstone, but there might be as many as 40 columns in this. He's talking about something that is twice the size of this, twice as many columns.
80 columns.
And that there were 12 of them.
Times
so
12.
80 columns in one hall.
If it's there, it wasn't the Egyptians, right? Because it's insane. It just is.
That's one of these halls, and now you've got 12 more of them, as well as 3,000 chambers. So this is quite a mighty
It doesn't
construction.
make sense.
Now, one thing that he does say is that the roof was made of a single stone. I'm not so sure that would be the case here, even I'm skeptical of that, because I think what he is referring to when he says this, that should go again, no, go back one.
This could drag on.
Go.
Right, where are we? Diodorus Siculus, 1st century BC, Agrium, Sicily, Greek historian, the author of a universal history, Bibliotheca Historica. And it goes down to here, right? He lived in the time of Julius Caesar and Augustus, and his own statements make it clear that he travelled in Egypt during 60 to 57 BC and spent several years in Rome. The latest event mentioned by him belongs to the year 21 BC. His history consisted of 40 books and was divided into 3 parts. The first treats of the mythic history of the non-Hellenic and Hellenic tribes to the destruction of Troy. The second ends with Alexander's death, and the third continues the history as far as the beginning of Caesar's Gallic War. Of this extensive work, there are extant only the first 5 books, treating of the mythic history of the Egyptians, Assyrians, Ethiopians, and Greeks, and also the 11th to the 20th books inclusive, beginning with the Greco-Persian War of 480 to 479, and ending with the history of the successors of Alexander before the partition of the Macedonian Empire. The rest exists only in fragments preserved in Photius and the excerpts of Constantine Porphyrogenitus. The Bibliotheca, invaluable where no other continuous historical source has survived, is of considerable value too, as supplying to some extent the loss of the works of earlier authors from which it is compiled. He does not always quote his authorities, but in the books that have survived, his most important sources for Greek history were certainly Ephorus and Hieronymus of Cardia. In particular sections, e.g. for Sicily or the reign of Alexander, Diodorus followed special authorities who cannot always be named for certain. For chronology, he used probably look, I have to do this right because right now this is all right. That was the Siculus. Right, I had done. I can say right now, okay, that there is no Siculus and no Pomponius apart from that. The very end. Everything that, and there's no labyrinth in there. So now all we have to do is go through all of this lot, right? You can see where I've pulled the books out. They've all got little tags in. I've pulled them out. Right? All up there. And a couple up there. See, this is the thing that people are thinking, God, what a drag. It kind of is a drag, but how else? If I call something like this out, how else do you do it? You have to go and look for the information. This is what people are missing. You cannot trust search engines online. You cannot. They lie to you. It's very, very tricky, isn't it? What do you mean they lie to us? Everybody trusts Google. I'm going to leave the Spanish until last. There's a few oddities in there, like a few names. There's no labyrinth, laberinto in Spanish. Right, let's start from the top. Play it from the top, Sam. Here we go. This shouldn't take too long, but it's something I said I was going to do, and I have to do it for the record. Herodotus. No Siculus, no Pomponius. This is the book of biographies. Now, I am going to say it again. Herodotus, he is too good to be true. He's too good to be true. He's everywhere. What I might do is one day get a couple of blackboards and just write down everything that he's written, everything that he's done, people that he's seen, spoken to. It's just on and on. And what this guy is saying, compared to what's in the books, well, Herodotus, Greek historian, his history of the Greco-Persian Wars is the first important history of ancient Greece and Asia Minor. He was born in Asia Minor at Halicarnassus, but is said to have become unpopular for political reasons and forced into exile. His rational and scientific approach to writing history, as opposed to chronicles which attempt no explanation of events, was unique in the Greek world and reflects the influences of Asian philosophy and Athenian experience on the growth of his mind. That's it. And there's nothing with the other two, right? Now we have questions again. Now, the timetable of history. Right? The timetables of history. So this is all right in this format all the way through. It goes from like 1880, and keep going back, 1088, and then we go into the minus, into the BC. The only thing really at the beginning of this is Egypt and Labyrinth. What have I done? This is on the book, this is on the Labyrinth. Look, all these circles, right? I just looked for everything Egypt. 2000 to 1500 BC, Egyptians in control of Crete and Aegean Islands. Social unrest in Egypt. Liberation of Egypt from Hyksos rule by Amosis I Marx. 18th dynasty brings Egypt to height of its power and achievements. So this all happened Look, there's no way. There is no way they could know all of this from how? 1500 to minus 1000 BC. Pomponius extends Egyptian empire along eastern Mediterranean to banks of Euphrates and to Upper Nile. Under the peaceful reign of Amenhotep, Egyptian trade and culture flourish. 20th dynasty in Egypt, decline of power begins. All on the first page, right? 500. We've got 1,000 years. That's 1,000 years there, right? Because it's little bits that happened. Now, here we go. The Great Labyrinth of Egypt, built by Amenemhet. Now, that's not the massive one. That's the one over in Crete, wasn't it? Earliest beginnings of the building of Stonehenge near Salisbury, Wiltshire. This is 2000 to 1500 BC. Music, 2000 to 1500 BC. Percussion instruments added to Egyptian orchestral music. This is where, how do they know? There's no pictures. We don't even know how the Egyptians built them. They didn't build them, but if they did, why are there no records? There are no records on how the Egyptians built the pyramids, but they know that in 1500 BC, what was it? Percussion instruments added to the Egyptian orchestral music. Science, technology and growth, 2000 to 1500 BC. Egyptians used knotted rope triangle with Pythagorean numbers to construct right angles. But this one, daily life, Egypt, 2000 to 1500 BC. Contraceptives in use in Egypt. They know 2,000 years ago that contraceptives were being used in Egypt, but they don't know how the pyramids were built. They don't know how the Egyptians built the pyramids, right? But they know that contraceptives were being used 2000 BC. If people don't see something a little bit off there, anyway, then we have 1500 to 1000 BC, court dances in Egypt accompanied by harp music. How do they know that? Leprosy in India and Egypt. Memphis becomes Egyptian capital in place of Thebes. Regulations concerning the sale of beer in Egypt. 1500 to 1000 BC. There is nothing. There is not even a record of how the pyramids were built, but they know that regulations concerning the sale of beer in Egypt. Widespread robbery of royal tombs, Egypt. Thieves are brought to trial. Right, so that was the period. That was the labyrinth. That's all there is. Right, Pomponius dynasty, jewel reign, Egyptian fable, battle between head and belly, ivory carving practiced in Egypt. So we're 800 to 700 BC. 700 to 600 BC, Egyptian hieroglyphs are adapted to demonic script. And that kind of fizzles out from here. Seriously, by son Campbell, who conquers Egypt and has himself crowned pharaoh. Bit naughty, but I suppose Egypt was up for anything, weren't they? And then it's just, so that is it for Labyrinth, okay? Now, they're lying about history. They're lying about history. Egypt. Hey? Have I missed something here? That's right. So it's the other one, timelines in history. Right, Europe, Asia. And so it's all down the bottom. See these circles? Because that's Africa. All right, and this is 10,000, is that 10,000 BC? 10,000, yep, so we're really right in the BC. In fact, whereas BC, we're at the beginning of the BC. I could say the beginning of the BS, couldn't I? 9,000 BC, stone used to rub husks off grain in Egypt. 5,000 BC, farming begins in Egypt. 3,100 BC, hieroglyphic writing in Egypt. 2686 to 2181 in Egypt, Old Kingdom. Middle Kingdom, 1570 to 1070. New Kingdom, 2650 BC, the Step Pyramid. 2584 to 2465, Pyramids and Sphinx at Giza. It's all lies. Egyptians revolt, Alexander captures Egypt, fire destroys Great Library of Alexandria. Now that would have been a tragedy if it happened. A library. See, what people aren't understanding is everything I'm reading out of, right, these books. There's so much information in these books, right? It's all here. It is all here. It can be cross-referenced with all of the rubbish that they taught today. And you can see things do not line up. So that was all with this one. It's pointless going in any later. Right. I'm not demoralised, right? Because I didn't, it's not the case I didn't want to find Siculus or Pomponius, but it's just bizarre how it's happened, right? Right. Herodotus. Let's do this. Come on, Herodotus, let's stop messing about. Herodotus, I'm saying he's a plant. He has been fed into history and he's got an answer for everything. He's the guy, this is the person that is telling you what happened, right? And it's too perfect. It is too perfect. It just is. You can't say it just is, you need evidence. It's too perfect. Herodotus, 1984. Was the first Greek historian. He undertook to write the history of the world up to his own time. What would he have known? What would they have known about the world? How on earth would he have gathered all of this information in one lifetime? All he had was a horse. There were no wings. There were no boats. Would have been basic. Herodotus is famous for the 9 books he wrote on the rise of the Persian Empire. The Persian invasions of Greece in 1490 and 480 BC, the heroic fight of the Greeks against the invaders, and the final Greek victory. Herodotus wrote his history in a lively manner. He even included many stories which he did not believe, because they made his account more interesting. Who would know that? This is what I'm talking about. They know all of these details about this guy. It isn't logical. And his natural style has made his books enjoyable from his own time down to the present. Herodotus was born when he studied the history, the things he learned in his travels formed the materials of his histories. In about 447 BC, he visited Athens and 3 years later settled in the colony of Tyrol, which Pericles was then founding in southern Italy. Nothing is known of the rest of Herodotus' life, but it has been said that he died and was buried at Turi. For a quotation from Herodotus. Now, that's it in there, right? Maybe I should be taking these tags out now, right? Because this part of the journey is going to be over. 1984. Oh! God, I thought that freaking thing was going to flop. Right, P. Right, Labyrinth. See, there's no fast way of doing this. You can't go think, oh, I'll go to Google, that will tell me everything. No, it won't. It will lie to you. It will lie to you. H. Oh, people don't believe it. You believe everything you're told. Labyrinth was a building with many confusing paths and passageways. According to legend, Daedalus built it for King Minos of Crete. Minos wanted it as a prison for the monster called the Minotaur. He sacrificed 7 Greeks. If you've heard this, it's the same explanation. Identical, right? That killed the Minotaur and found his way out of the twisting passages. Ariadne, Minos' daughter, had given him a ball of thread to unwind as he went in. Archaeologists have discovered a palace which may have been the Cretan labyrinth. It is full of winding passages and stands on a mountainside near Knossos in Crete. Traces of another great labyrinth were found in Egypt. Herodotus says that the Egyptian labyrinth was more marvelous than the pyramids. It was probably built in imitation of the Cretan labyrinth. Again, that is all it says. It's about the 3rd or 4th one. It's identical. It's identical. Right, okay, LN. And we have no Siculus and no Pomponius, okay? Right, we go over to Funk and Wagnall. We have Labyrinth and Herodotus. Oh, sorry, I think I've got a cold coming on. Right, let's do Herodotus first. So now we're looking at 1986. Right, this is a bit of a longer one. Herodotus, Greek historian, the father of history, born in I'm just going to speed read and stop at the bits that the direction and extent of his travels are not precisely known, but they provided him with valuable first-hand knowledge of virtually the entire ancient Middle East. How does one person, no transport whatsoever, do all of these rounds and write books at the same time? It's ridiculous. He went to Athens, then the centre and focus of culture in the Greek world, where he won the admiration of the most illustrious men of Greece, including the great Athenian statesman Pericles. In 443 BC, Herodotus settled in the Pan-Hellenic colony of Turi in southern Italy. He devoted the remainder of his life to the completion of his great work entitled History, the Greek word for inquiry. The history has been divided by later authors into 9 parts. The earlier books, then it was divided into 9 parts. All perfectly convenient. 9 different sections. The earlier books deal with the customs, legends, history, and traditions of the peoples of the ancient world. See, look, how does one person do that? Including the Lydians, Scythians, Medes, Persians, Assyrians, and Egyptians. The last 3 books describe the armed conflicts between Greece and Persia in the early 5th century BC. In the history, the development of civilization moves inexorably toward a great confrontation between Persia and Greece, which are presented as the centres, respectively, of Eastern and Western culture. Herodotus' information was derived in part from the work of predecessors, but it was widely supplemented with knowledge that he had gained from his own extensive travels. Although he was sometimes inaccurate, he was generally careful to separate plausible reports from implausible ones. And we've already had where some people say, how can he even be trusted with a single word? And then other people say, no, he did really well. It's just this contradiction of terms all the way through. It is not logical. Was he good or was he not good? Was he accurate or was he not accurate? How can he be really, really, really accurate and admired by everyone, but at the same time, nobody trusts anything he says because he's inaccurate. He makes stuff up to sound interesting. Which one is it? It's impossible to tell because it's 50-50 all the way through in all of the books. That in itself is illogical. It just is. If you first remember, where was I? Nothing stable in human affairs. Right, here we go. Herodotus demonstrates a wide knowledge of Greek literature and contemporary rational thought. The universe, he believed, is ruled by fate and chance, and nothing is stable in human affairs. Moral choice is still important, however, since the gods punish the arrogant. This attempt to draw moral lessons from the study of great events formed the basis of the Greek and Roman historiographical tradition, which Herodotus is rightly regarded as the founder. One guy, one person in all of the books, right? One person. A bit like the Galileo, isn't it? The 1600s. He's everywhere. But we don't know anything about him. He's unpredictable. Sometimes he's wrong. Sometimes he's right. 15. Look. Now what's that one there? And we have no Siculus and no Pomponius, right? So now we're getting there, Now we go to 1979. So they're not in, I had to use certain shelves for certain books, sizes and weight, etc. Labyrinth was a building with many confusing paths and passageways. According to legend, Daedalus built it for King Minos of Crete. Minos wanted it as a prison for the monster called the Minotaur. He sacrificed 7 Greek youths and 7 maidens to the Minotaur every year. Theseus, the son of the Greek king, went into the labyrinth, killed the Minotaur, and found his way out of the twisting passages. Ariadne, Minos' daughter, had given him a ball of thread to unwind as he went in. He followed the thread and escaped. Archaeologists have discovered a palace which may have been, the same traces of another great labyrinth were found in Egypt. Herodotus says that the Egyptian labyrinth was more marvellous than the pyramids. Even this little tiny bit at the end, which is not him now. It was probably built in imitation of the older Cretan labyrinth. So that in all of the books, just about the very, very same explanation for labyrinth. It's almost like a token explanation. No Pomponius, no Siculus. Where's Herodotus? That was the labyrinth. Why haven't I not got an H in Herodotus? Why have it here? Or did I already read him and put it back? I did, didn't I? God, I really do need some sleep. Did I or did I not? No, I didn't, because it's up here. Herodotus was the first Greek historian. He undertook to write the history of the world up to his own time again. The Roman orator Cicero called him the father of history. Herodotus is famous for the 9 books he wrote on the rise of the Persian Empire. The Persian invasions of Greece, 494 AD, the heroic fight of the Greeks against the invaders, and the final Greek victory.
Herodotus wrote his history in a lively manner. He even included many stories which he did not believe because they made his account more interesting. His natural style, see, we've heard of that. Travelled widely, went to study the manners, customs and religions. He visited Athens, He said he died and buried. Might as well not have bothered because it is all the same stuff. Right, now we are getting to 1992. So this is one of my later ones, Herodotus. Don't forget, we started at 1961 and we're now at 1992, so that's 30 years. Has anything changed? Herodotus, 484-45 BC, was the first Greek historian. He undertook to write the history of the world up to his own time. The Roman orator Cicero called him the father of history. Famous for the 9 books, he wrote his history in a lively manner. He even included many stories which he did not believe. Herodotus was born religious to the people, and he learned as much as he could of their history. The thing Herodotus learned on his travels formed the material of his histories. In about 447 BC, he visited Athens. 3 years later, settled in the colony of Tyrol, which Pericles was then founding in southern Italy. He died and was buried there. Right. Nothing new, okay? 30 years worth of books. Why would there be anything new? And it's not like it's going to change. And Labyrinth, 1992. Labyrinth was a place with many confusing paths and passageways. According to Greek mythology, Daedalus built it for King prisoner for the Minotaur. Theseus' son went in. Arachne, the daughter, gave him a ball of thread. He escaped. Archaeologists have discovered a palace. It could be the one that's broken down. Many double axes were found at the palace. Most scholars believe that the word labyrinth came from labris, which means double axe. Later, it came to mean any place that contained many confusing passageways. Archaeologists have also found traces of another great labyrinth in Egypt. Right, hear that? Archaeologists have also found traces of another great labyrinth in Egypt. Buildings with confusing and seemingly endless networks of passages are found in some amusement parks. So here, in the 1992, there's no mention of Herodotus having been there. It's just archaeologists. And then we have no Pomponius, 1992, no Siculus. I didn't do those. Oh God. Right, but this is going to be easiest if there's no anything, right? And when I say none, and that one I didn't because it's a medical book. God, 43 minutes of just nothing. Look, there's nothing I can do about it. I said I was going to do this and I have to do it, so I'm doing it. See all those zeros. There is no mention of Herodotus. There is nothing in all of these encyclopedias. Right? It's really weird. There's loads of stuff in there, but there is no mention of Herodotus. There is no mention of a labyrinth. And obviously, there's no mention of Pomponius or Siculus. So that was that. And then, right, we're getting to the end. Right. No Siculus. No Pomponius, and this is a 1975 in depth. No Labyrinth, in depth, no Labyrinth. Herodotus, in depth. And then just the Spanish, a couple of things about the Spanish ones. Right, this is the biggest write-up of all of them, right? Now, what have I circled? So, it is believed that Herodotus was born, perhaps, in 484 BC of a prominent family in Halicarnassus in Asia Minor. He was exiled from that city by the tyrant, but returned late. I'm going to speed read, okay? Also, he said that Herodotus was related to the epic poet and spent a considerable time. Despite his services, popular time permanently later he joined the new colony sponsored by Athens. It is significant that Herodotus should have been an Asiatic Greek by birth and upbringing, and equally significant that he left Asia behind him for Athens and the West. Development from Asia consisted first in asking questions, then in looking for information relevant to that question, and finally in drawing a conclusion. Here we go. He learned to make use of history, the new method of scientific inquiry. So all the way back here, this science, okay? Scientific inquiry. First ask questions, then in looking for information relevant to that question, and finally in drawing a conclusion from the data collected. Without his sojourn in Athens and in general, without the breadth of view he acquired by life as an exile, Herodotus might never have come to ask himself the questions that made him a historian. Why did the Persian Wars come about, and what deeds were accomplished on both sides that are worthy of being remembered? The historical work of Herodotus, therefore, is intimately connected with the facts of his personal life, while many of those facts must be deduced from the history. When he began collecting information, he had not decided to... Here we go. This is 400 BC, 400 and whatever, right? Now listen. When he began collecting information, he had not decided to write about the Persian Wars, but he probably had in mind a geographical work, something like that of Herodotus or Miletus. Herodotus had written a book known as the Progesis, enough of which remains to show that he described the different lands around the Mediterranean Sea in clockwise order, beginning with Spain and ending with the north coast of Africa. Even before Herodotus, the philosopher, here we go, had shown an interest in physical geography, constructing, so this is somebody else. Herodotus set out to improve on the results obtained by Herodotus. There are a number of passages in the text of the history indicating that when Herodotus began to collect his information, he was not thinking about the Persian Wars. It's just ridiculous. For example, he undertook a journey in the Black Sea region without making any effort to cover the ground traversed by Darius in his Scythian campaign, a campaign he was later to describe in great detail. Then again, his trips to Tyre and to the island of Thasos were both motivated by his curiosity about the legendary Heracles, a theological rather than a historical question. His mind to write. Later on, when he had made up his mind to write about the Persian Wars, he could not bear to leave out the account of his investigations in Egypt, which fill the entire second book of the history. He probably went there with a copy of Herodotus's Progesis in his portmanteau, that must be case, along with an improved version of Anaximander's map. Look. Herodotus entered Egypt in the western delta at Canopus sometime in August, departing from Pelusium in the eastern delta before December. In between, he visited quite a number of famous places, including Memphis and the site of the Great Pyramids. He travelled up the Nile all the way to the first cataract, stopping briefly in Thebes. Unfortunately, it's not known what year this occurred, though his reference to the skulls of the Egyptian and Persian dead still lying on the battlefield of Pyramids shows it was sometime after 460 BC. More important are the inferences drawn from his remarks, for they show that his primary interest was in the geography and monuments rather than in the history of Egypt. A good example of how his mind worked in his discussion of the causes for the annual Nile flood, in which he criticises earlier explanations and offers one of his own. But he was more interested in the long-term effects of the annual inundation. Others had noted marine fossils, not only in Egypt, far inland and concluded that land can be created by the silt of rivers. Can you not see that they're telling you everything that they want you to believe about all of that era and Egypt and this and that and the other, but they're using him to tell you? I think it's obvious. Nobody. That's 2,500 years ago. 2,500 years ago, all of this information, one person. Somebody would struggle. How? It doesn't make sense. People think it does because you're not looking at it. You put yourself in his position. He's got nothing. A horse, a cart, all his books and stuff, what he writes, and the Greek and the Persians, and all about that Greek and Persian war, and then all about that, and then I'll go to Egypt and tell everybody about the pyramids and found a Labyrinth, and then it just goes on and on and on. All they're doing, they're using somebody to pump people full of illogical information. They're making up history. But Herodotus went further, using such information as he had about the height to which the Nile rose in earlier times when it flooded the land, as compared with the greater height needed to accomplish this purpose in his own day. He tried to calculate how long it took for the silt brought down by the river to build up, not merely the delta, but the rest of Egypt as well. Thus, he speculated that if the Nile changed course slightly and emptied into the Red Sea, which was about the size of Egypt, it would create a new land there within 5,000 years. His data were unsatisfactory, but his method was scientific. Again, he did not stop there. In summarizing the political history of Egypt, he put the pyramid kings who belonged back in the Old Kingdom at a very late date. This has been explained in various ways, but the answer may well be just pure crap. His calculations had persuaded him that the pyramids could not have been built so early, because the area north of Memphis would still have been underwater. He was quite wrong, of course, but magnificently wrong, because he formulated for the first time the relationship existing between man and his environment during the historical period. Can you not see how stupid this is? Herodotus, however, is not always completely a rationalist, as is shown in the respect he paid to the Oracle of Delphi, despite the many indications of rather fallible behaviour to be found in his pages. Somehow Herodotus manages to reconcile belief in divinely controlled universe with an equally strong belief in natural causes. To understand the kind of man he was, one must consider his attitude toward the supernatural. Others found less sceptical towards religion, views to which should have been exposed, but a good example of his account of Croesus is doomed by the fact that the founder of his line, Gyges, usurped the throne. The Delphic oracle had predicted the over. It's like he's an entire history book, isn't it? He's an entire history book, a whole syllabus. But while Herodotus preserves these supernatural explanations, he is not satisfied. He offers a rational explanation side by side with the irrational. After fighting a drawn battle with Cyrus, Croesus withdraws to Sardis and dismisses his allies on the mistaken assumption that Cyrus also will retire. But Cyrus did no such thing, and when he suddenly appeared before the walls of Sardis, it was too late for Croesus to recall his allies. Did Sardis fall as a result of divine vengeance for the sun? Another illustration of Herodotus' own dreams. Many of his dreams, he goes on about dreams, so he does dreams as well. He does dreams. He tells his nephew that dreams can have natural causes, that men tend to dream at night about matters that have been occupying their minds during waking hours, and that there is nothing supernatural in such nocturnal manifestations. But in the end, Herodotus is forced to withdraw his opposition to the world. It may as well have been in Athens that Herodotus decided to write about the Persian Wars. Having made up his mind, he worked up the ethnographic, geographic, and mythological materials he had collected into a new framework in which all past history leads up to a struggle between East and West, culminating with the invasion of Xerxes in 408 BC. In the process, he also makes a clear distinction between history and prehistory, the dividing line for Greece coming at about 600 BC. Oh, thank God, not long. Rules of evidence for legendary figures such as Minos the Crete of Troy are different than those. History to appreciate audiences. Excuse me. Herodotus was unique in the ancient world. Other famous historians, Now that is in depth. That was in depth. And there was no mention of him saying, so in about 4 or 5 of the 10 encyclopedias, and some randoms, the only thing he says is, there is a labyrinth in Egypt more magnificent than the pyramids. That's it. He doesn't go into any other detail. Yet here, I have questions, lots of questions. This stuff is illogical. It's as illogical as the stuff that's on this board. The whole speed of light crew, the Galileo, Kepler, Huygens, all of that lot. It's all, that stuff was all fabricated to justify them getting to the moon. They made it up. He did this, he did that 200 years before electricity, and now we're using it. Why is it the US is controlling the whole world's history? And I mean that literally, because I emailed them to ask them about Roma. And I said, where did you get the information? This is the historical library or something in the US. They are the people who control the planet's history. And they never did reply to me. It was about Roma. They own the planet's history, right? And you cannot change it. You have to write to them. You have to be from the US. They own the history. So all of these Italian, German, French, all of these people who did all this stuff in the Renaissance, the US owns it all. And they're the one that teach it. They're the people who teach it with their spin on things. No, it's so obvious that it's all crap. It really is. And then the Spanish ones, we have, he's called Herodotus de Halicarnasso, and there's not much on him at all. A box, a little box. Historiador, viajó por Grecia, Egipto y Asia Menor con el fin de recoger información sobre las costumbres y el pasado de los lugares que visitaba. Su historia consta de 9 libros, escritos en dialecto jónico. Sus contemporáneos dieron a cada uno de ellos el nombre de una musa. El asunto principal de la obra es el relato de las guerras médicas, pero se incluyen como introducción episodios de la historia de los egipcios. Aunque no, juegos. This is new. Heródoto recoge en su exposición leyendas y relatos maravillosos, aunque los presenta como tradiciones. Se dice que leyó su obra en los Juegos Olímpicos. He apparently spoke at the Olympics. He told some stories maravillosos. Se dice que leyó he apparently read some of his work at some of the Olympic Games. I've never, has anybody ever heard that before? It's in the Spanish one.
It's in the Spanish one. And there is no Labyrinth, there's no Labyrinth, or in Spanish, Laberinto, it's not there. There is obviously no Pomponius, and there is obviously no Siculus. That's it. Thank God for that. I had to do it because I said I was going to do it. I said there was no Siculus and no Pomponius, and they turned up in the very, very last P and S of the books I was looking at. None. In all of the other books, only in the 1975. And not even in the in-depth. They're both in the normal one. So what is the verdict? The verdict is there a labyrinth? If there is, the same as the pyramids, they've got sweet FA to do with the Egyptians. To think that they do is kind of just a lack of thinking straight, I'd say, by anybody who thinks the Egyptians carved the equivalent weight of 63 Nimitz class aircraft carriers just to build Pyramid Giza. Right? Right. Now, it's bedtime. I'm looking forward to this guy, Possum. It will be worth it, okay? It will be worth it. I'm done, like a dog's dinner. I said I was going to do it, and I've done it. Now, it's just Flinders Savage Petrie, the guy that had his stonemasons or whatever, cut through 5 feet of granite before he went belly down and scurried through the bottom of the pyramid. More horseradish. Oh, God, an hour. That is.